My name is Peter Padovano. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Hello Team. We appreciate the time that you guys are giving us, HR professionals and folks like yourself that have given us this allocated half an hour of time to chat about areas that we see a lot of pain in from clients and prospects we've talked to in terms of improving culture when it comes to engagement, recognition, as well as health. The agenda for today's conversation is going to be focusing more on the challenges faced by most employers and HR professionals. We'll also introduce one of our panelists who I was fortunate enough to work with in the past, and also what he's seeing in terms of trends. His name is Rick McCartney from iReward Health. We'll also talk about things that are relevant in this day and age in terms of acquiring top talent and also keeping people engaged in the workforce when it comes to not only technology, but also that of the human touch. And then more importantly, figure out the best ways of making a place of work and one's career fun. Just to give you some key statistics before we jump into the webinar, I would assume that a lot of folks that are on this call know companies like Google and Amazon and Apple. What everyone's talking about is the challenges that people face in terms of the small and medium-sized companies, even large companies, when challenged to fight for the same competition that those name brand companies are acquiring. 76% of employers say that talent is scarce and that HR folks are challenged each and every day when it comes to keeping them employee value proposition in line with the views and desires of candidates and current staff. SHRM recently did a survey of approximately 1,700 working professionals and 800 talent leaders like yourselves on the call, including that of senior professional HR folks in 17 countries. And what the recurring theme was, and the biggest challenge that most folks have stated, is employee engagement. That's the key to success when acquiring top talent and keeping those people engaged at the workplace. At the same time, employees are having more challenges than ever before because the changing work environment is occurring today. And what do I mean by that? I remember the days, not to outdate myself, but that one would report to an office every single day and that one would be at a company for 20 to 25 years before they get that golden watch. Well, career pursuits have changed. The vision of a career has changed because a lot of folks and a lot of companies are now having more work at remote locations. Employees are now working more out of the house and are having the biggest challenge of knowing how to communicate and being able to convey messages from the executive teams and feeling connected to one's workplace while they grow within the organization is the biggest challenge that most folks are facing today in not only acquiring that top talent, but keeping them engaged. So today's purpose of today's agenda is really learning the ins and outs of what folks like Rick McCartney have seen, what iReward Health has provided to clients, and I will turn it over to Rick shortly in terms of allowing him to give a little bio of himself. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Rick. Rick, feel free to take it away.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for that introduction and for hosting us today. And thank you all for joining us. So as Pete said, I'm Rick. I'm from iReward Health, where we're helping employers to attract and retain talent using our engaging health reward application that helps employees to just have greater motivation in building healthy behaviors. So I'm a nurse practitioner by training. So I came from the clinic where I was working with individuals, with groups of people, and the common thread was, just trying to improve from their baseline health. And so I started out at the Joslin Diabetes Center. I was doing community interventions to help people to start the lifestyle changes to prevent complications from type 2 diabetes or to kind of reduce the medications and other side effects they may be having. And then I shifted into working out in the community with focuses on mental health as well as really problematic behaviors such as addiction, gambling, substance use, other things. And the reason why I was drawn to using technology was that I saw a lot of opportunity and the ability to use applications and the relationship that employers have with employees to help them to live healthier lives that are more fulfilling. And so at iReward Health, we really have a focus on helping people to pay attention to their behaviors and then to take steps to improve from their baseline. And, that really stems from us knowing that health happens in, 1,000 small moments throughout each day. It's not something that's kind of achieved over, at one time and then you kind of stick, health in your toolkit and then move on. It really is a process. So what I'm going to do today is I'll take a few minutes and talk about just engaging employees in general. Then I'll discuss some specific ways that small businesses can compete with big technology and enterprise customers and companies for talent. And then finally, I'll review some resources that may help you out as people managers. So as you're figuring out how do I engage my people, how do I get their attention, help them feel like they really belong, and then you can kind of try some of those things out and hopefully start to look at this process of engaging, attracting and retaining talent as a process over time, as opposed to just like one thing that you do once and then it kind of unlocks everything. And so I'll start off, when I look at people, whether it's as a clinician kind of sitting one-on-one or with employers that I'm working with, I've really seen that people have very similar core drives. So when you're hiring employees, most of the people who walk in your door share a few things in common. They want to work on something meaningful. They want to belong somewhere. Like nobody likes feeling like that person that's just like hanging out by the punch bowl because they don't have anyone to talk to. So people want to feel like they belong. And they want to feel that their involvement and belonging is important and it makes a difference kind of in their environment. And so I think those characteristics are generally what people refer to when they talk about engagement. So like I say engagement is like the oil in the machine that's driving your company. It's removing friction. It helps tasks to be completed more efficiently. It can minimize interpersonal conflict. So if you have some team dynamics and people really aren't getting along or they seem to be fighting each other, really rallying and engaging people around a shared mission can help streamline that. And then it unifies your employees. You have shared objectives. And if people feel engaged with those objectives, then they're going to, help your company to be more successful. And I think this is an important point, but there is no magical solution to kind of immediately instill engagement. You're not going to have a workshop or, an in-service where someone comes in and like gives you the key and then it's like you have an engaged workforce. It needs to be something that's continually evolving in your organization. And I'll talk about this in a little bit, but smaller businesses have an edge when it comes to creating a more engaging environment. And so the tip number one, for having increased engagement is to treat people as individuals, but to also treat them as a part of a team. And so in the hiring process, a lot of times people are assessed as individuals. But I think what you really want to do is understand the value each person brings. And kind of what their personal values are. So that helps you to understand what drives them. You want to know what their unique interests are. But then you want to know how that can enrich your company's community. So you can have this, all-star, really talented person who comes highly recommended, and they may not be the best fit for your company. So at the same time, you want to hire and retain people who care about your team and your company progress and success. So if an employee doesn't value the success as a team, then that's not a trait that you want to retain. That's not something that you want to reinforce. It's not a behavior that you want to reward. So having that person leave the company is a necessary good. That's okay. We're not, when we talk about attracting and retaining talent, we do not want to retain people who whose interests are not aligned with the business. That's a necessary churn, and that's okay. That's something that we accept as people managers. And I really believe from all the work that I've done with different employers is that this has to start in the hiring process. So when you're hiring people, when you're letting them know about your company, you can set expectations that individual performance is going to be assessed based on how it drives success for the team, not just kind of individual milestones, but that every milestone is tied to company growth and performance. And that really, as a behaviorist, that's what I see in all kind of communities and individuals is like having aligned incentives and goals. Is you want the way that you're reinforcing your people to be, congruent with things that are good for your business. And then again, I think it's essential that you're hiring for fit and not for pedigree. And this helps people to not feel insecure. You don't want to have a culture of insecurity. If you're hiring a bunch of people because of the school that they went to or the degree that they had, and you have other people who are really core members of your team who maybe don't have that pedigree, but they're a phenomenal fit, they could feel very much like, someone else is being hired for their pedigree and not necessarily the value that they're going to bring to the team. That's a big thing to kind of watch out for. And then the other thing that's very, very important, especially, for companies of all sizes, but especially for smaller companies, is you need to decide what your company really cares about and what they value, and then make sure that those values permeate every corporate conversation, meeting, every time that you're assessing, how things are going. It should drive back to the real values. Most people know that the missions and value statements are supposed to look good on paper. And as individuals, we also tend to have a really low tolerance for things that come across as fake. So if you have company values that are, integrity and transparency, but people go to work and they feel like they never know what's going on or that they're being lied to, that, really doesn't work. And, using the different core values of your company and framing all KPIs, performance improvement plans, new projects, everything kind of through that lens, helps people to go home at the end of the day and know, you know what? I am a part of something and it's authentic, and that's why I work here instead of working at, this high-priced place where maybe I could get more money. And so it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to get people to engage with something that isn't well-defined or that isn't genuine. So, if it feels like false advertising in your mission or value statements, that's going to be incredibly difficult. You want to talk a little bit about competing for talent, and I touched on it some there, but I believe that small and mid-sized businesses have a huge advantage over larger enterprises in two main areas. The first area is that a single employee that joins a small or mid-sized business has a lot more potential to influence the organization than a single employee at a very large enterprise. The second is that the culture at a small or mid-sized business is much easier to change or improve than a culture that's very kind of well-defined, which tends to be the case at enterprise customers. And so what we've seen, and I know, Pete and I talk a lot about this, and Hello Team and iReward Health and a number of different companies are popping up to kind of try to be very, very relevant in this age, is that like great talent is not just looking for bottom line and paycheck. They want to feel that they belong somewhere, that it's meaningful to them, they feel good about what they're producing, and that they can make a difference. And they also want to know that they're not going to just be easily replaced. So when you're kind of a very small piece of a very large puzzle, which is many enterprise workers, it can feel like, if I quit today, the show's going to go on in any which way. And while you want your smaller businesses to be set up for success, even if a key person does leave, you want to create the environment that feels like, okay, they care about me as an individual. You're not generally going to be able to compete with Google or Facebook on compensation and the total dollar value of perks. But you absolutely can compete with Facebook and with Google when it comes to supporting your unique employees in meeting their own professional and personal goals. And you can also adjust company processes much faster and can incorporate employee feedback, really listening to your employees in ways that even Google and Facebook cannot. There are plenty of stories of key employees pointing out issues in the workforce and basically being told, maybe maybe your perspective doesn't matter, or maybe we don't need to hear more from you. And I think at smaller organizations, you have more flexibility in how you incorporate feedback. And if if an employee at a small or mid-sized business feels that they're just a number, then you're going to lose all of your edge, and you really cannot compete with big businesses. So I think that, like, if there's one key takeaway from today, it would be that, like, make sure that your employees don't feel that they're just a number, because that's kind of your that's your competitive edge against larger businesses with larger budgets there. And so now, Pete, if you
So, Rick, if I may interject,
yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned a lot of key points in terms of basically you're developing your own brand, even if you're a small and medium-sized business, and making sure that brand is communicated. What I like to turn our attention to is what iReward Health is doing today when it comes to making the workplace a fun environment as well.
Absolutely. If you can click forward to the next slide, I'll walk you through what we're doing and kind of how we're doing it. As I mentioned, so we are an employee reward company. So we're helping employers to implement engaging reward programs that align company and individual incentives. So basically, we want companies know that if their people are healthy, that they're going to be more engaged. They're going to care about their employer. And there are a lot of things that are out of reach for smaller businesses. Many of them find difficulty with being, self-insured. They may be more fully insured. They may not have access to some of the discounts that come with being a larger company with more negotiating power. And so the core iReward Health product was focused on small and mid-sized businesses, and it's built around a custom reward system for your employees engaging in healthy behaviors. And so what that really specifically means is that we want each employee to think about their health at least once per day. We want them to be in the process of building a healthy habit in any given month, and really to view health as a journey. So it's not, again, health is not something that you just acquire, but it's something that is built over time. And then if, Pete, you'll click to this next slide here. So the way that we've done that, and the way that we really see necessary to accomplish this, is you need to have modern technology. So the enterprise apps of years past are not really acceptable to employees. They won't engage with them. They won't use them. A lot of the old intranets and internal systems are really unacceptable. And so we have a mobile and web application. The web application is also mobile responsive. So if you've got people managers, they can kind of run their incentive system on the go from their phones. You've got daily objectives and monthly games to build a healthy habit. And then when we talk about health, we're really looking at attention to diet, exercise, stress-reducing activity, and weight management. So we want people to be paying attention to core elements of health. The importance of doing custom rewards, especially for smaller businesses, is that managers of teams and kind of departments have a unique ability to really understand the people that are on their teams. So in our system, either an entire company can sign up, or you can have sub-department small teams using iReward Health for smaller subsets of their population. And since it scales down, customizing rewards gives a lot of power. We also do reward fulfillment. So for teams larger than 50 employees, you can create your own system that's going to do all the reward fulfillment, so you don't have the administrative overhead of trying to do those things. So we focus on having kind of quick, responsive technology, and it kind of scales down to any size, but can also grow with you over time. So if you want to really understand the specific tools here and offerings, we actually allow anybody to try iReward Health for free for 2 weeks. There's no credit card required to trial it. So you can go to iRewardHealth.com, click try it free today. It takes you less than 37 seconds to kind of set it up. You can use the app there, see what the experience would be like for your employees. And so what I recommend doing, and taking with you in your management of your people and looking at health incentives, is try to understand who they are, what they want, and how you can make something unique for them. And that's how you'll have an edge against larger employers. So thank you, Pete, and thank you all for listening here. But those are kind of my thoughts on engaging employees.
So to follow through in terms of, how we tie in iReward Health, again, it's about building your company brand. And Hello Team, as I mentioned before, we've been around for about 3 years, Rick and the folks on the line. And what we're helping do is build that culture, help them build that brand so that this way people can embrace it, even if they're remote or they're in the office next to one another. So the key to success for folks that are on this line, because I've seen a lot of challenges that have come across in terms of questions for this webinar. How do I communicate to folks? How do I get a gauge in terms of knowing what my job role is? Or how do I get a pulse in terms of what my employees really think about the culture or the direction of the company? And so what Hello Team represents is a full 360 employee engagement tool whereby it's allowing companies to communicate and collaborate, do culture surveys, get a pulse and sense of what the company is looking like in terms of internal staff, do recognition, give achievements, give recognition that is going to be customizable to your organization, but also understand one's jobs and roles and track the performance, as well as provide people analytics to understand what's the tenure of one staff. Do I need to do a review in terms of maybe promoting someone, making sure that I can coach people who are not achieving their personal goals. But again, what I always tell people, especially that we only have an abbreviated time of chatting with folks on this call, like I would do for Rick's group at iRewards, if you want to have a personal conversation about understanding how you can improve your own culture with the various pillars that we help our clients with, then we'll be glad to set up a separate call and dialogue to understand what your needs are, because I always believe Hello Team is a customizable approach for each and every one of you folks that are on the line. There may be challenges or gaps when it comes to communication, having a central location for people to find helpful links to that, of just getting a sense of what's necessary to build that brand name or culture, and then giving that recognition that is well deserved, like I'll give to Rick in terms of him joining in on this call and collaborating with me in terms of this webinar, to that of understanding my job, what my role is in terms of driving revenues and helping clients along the way and making it fun for clients to manage their people. And then finally, people analytics, like I mentioned before, just getting a sense of where do I need to grow and develop, and then more importantly, who needs improvements. To give you one screenshot of the actual website itself, again, this is not supposed to be a demo, but it gives some sense of what we talked about in the beginning of the agenda, which is really, it's not just the human touch, but having tools to compete against Google, Facebooks, and Amazons of the world. And the key here is having technology in conjunction with the human aspect or the human element to make sure that you use the technology to promote one's brand, promote one's culture, but then also make sure that people feel connected. And that's the key word that I would take away from this, folks, because connecting means not only a connection in terms of knowing one's goal or mission, if it's a non-for-profit, or goal in terms of driving revenues, but making it a fun work environment too. A lot of companies, people look at it as I'm getting a paycheck and I'm getting benefits. But I'll tell you right now, what motivates me more than anything else is when I get acknowledgement from my peers and my colleagues, knowing that I did a really good job. And hopefully you guys will feel that way when we get off the line, that saying, hey, there are aha moments that an iRewards Health or a Hello Team can achieve in terms of being a valued partner to your groups. So without further ado, I'd like to provide our respective contact information, Rick. If people have questions that they wish to address with us offline, I'll be more than glad to assist, and Rick will be glad to as well, to learn more about your business and your business needs. I know one question that came to my mind, and it was addressed prior to the call, Rick, if you would allow me to elaborate on it, was there was one particular prospect that was actually looking to understand how to get a better gauge of, making sure that everyone's on the same page and everyone's on the same page in terms of, that there's a good vibe in the culture. And what I always tell people, going back to the original thought, is things like surveys, doing tiny pulses that are anonymous. But again, it comes back to building that brand and having awareness at one's workplace. And I always tell people, there are going to be tools like Hello Teams and iRewards out there, but the value that we bring to the table is that each of us bring our own set of professional expertise, that we've seen it all in terms of small and medium-sized businesses, as well as large companies that we serve our public, that we realize the challenges are not the same for everyone, and that we're able to figure out solutions that make sense for one organization so that you can achieve success too. So without further ado, I'd like to conclude this discussion. And I would like to also thank Rick, who I'll give a high five and an appreciation for him joining in on this call today.
Thank you, Pete.
And thank you for the folks that are on the line. Have a great rest of the day.